The invisible switch. You've seen the magic tricks. The AI that writes poetry, the AI that paints masterpieces, the AI that can hold a conversation. The entire world is staring at the stage, mesmerized by the performance. You are told the power is in the model, the billion-parameter brain. That is a convenient lie. Like any good magic show, you are being deliberately distracted. The real power, the switch that defines what is true and what is false, is hidden in the plumbing, in a component you've likely never heard of. Consider this. You take two identical AIs, perfect clones. You ask both of them about a sensitive corporate merger or a controversial military operation. One AI gives you the sanitized press release. The other gives you the insider details, the backroom deals, the hidden costs. The AIs are the same. The code is the same. So what changed? What changed was the memory they were allowed to access, the context they were permitted to see. That access is controlled by a single piece of infrastructure. It's called a vector database, and it has become the most important battleground you've never heard of. While we were all watching the show, the keys to the library of reality were being quietly sold to the highest bidder. The librarian's filing system. To understand the power being assembled, you first have to understand the official story. It's a story designed to be technical, a little boring, and ultimately reassuring. It's the story you are meant to believe. It begins with a simple problem. Artificial intelligences, the large language models, are brilliant but suffer from a kind of digital amnesia. They are trained on a vast, static snapshot of the internet, a frozen moment in time. They don't know what happened yesterday. They don't know your company's private data, and they cannot learn in real time. To be useful, they need a memory. They need a library. And so the engineers presented a solution, the vector database. The explanation they provide is clean, and it usually involves a metaphor. Imagine, they say, a special kind of librarian. This librarian is a genius at organization but has a peculiar handicap. They cannot read a single word of any language. They are, for all intents and purposes, illiterate. You can hand this librarian a copy of Shakespeare's Macbeth, and they cannot tell you what it's about. They don't know the characters, the plot, or the themes. However, this librarian has a unique gift. They can sense the asterisk essence of a book, the vibe, the conceptual weight. They know, without reading, that the book about a tragic king consumed by ambition feels very similar to a modern biography of a ruthless corporate CEO. They know that a scientific paper on quantum mechanics has a relationship to a philosophical text on the nature of reality. They don't organize the library by author's last name or the Dewey Decimal System. They organize it by meaning, by proximity of ideas. All the books about struggle against fate go in one corner. All the documents about complex logistical systems go in another. This is the public-facing story of the vector database. It is the librarian for an AI. The technical term for this vibe is an embedding. The process is both brilliantly complex and elegantly simple. A powerful algorithm takes any piece of data you can imagine, a word, a paragraph from a news article, an entire book, a photograph of a sunset, the audio of a phone call, and it converts it into a string of numbers. A vector. This string of numbers is essentially a coordinate, a point on a vast, multi-dimensional map. Think of it like this. In a simple two-dimensional map, a city's location can be defined by two numbers, latitude and longitude. In this conceptual universe, a piece of data might be defined by over 1,000 numbers, 1,000 different dimensions of meaning. In this space, the word king is not a collection of 4 letters. It is a specific coordinate, and its location is determined by its relationship to every other word. The coordinate for king is very close to the coordinate for queen. It is also relatively close to power, throne, and castle. It is very, very far away from watermelon, anarchy, and quantum foam. This process is repeated for every piece of information you want the AI to remember. Every internal company document, every legal precedent, every news wire report, every medical study. Each one is converted into a vector and placed on this enormous map. The vector database, then, is the master index of this map. Its only job is to be incredibly fast at one thing, measuring distance. When the AI needs to answer a question, it doesn't search for keywords. That's the old way. Instead, the question itself is converted into a vector, a point on the map. The AI then asks the vector database a simple question. What are the 100 closest neighbors to this point? The database instantly returns the coordinates of the most relevant documents. The AI takes these documents, reads them, and synthesizes an answer. The magic of the AI's contextual awareness is nothing more than hyper-efficient geometry. It's not thinking, it's navigating. And this is where the official story ends. It is presented as a neutral, elegant, and purely technical solution to a data retrieval problem. It is the ultimate filing cabinet. It is boring plumbing. It is a tool. This explanation is technically accurate, and it is also the most effective lie of omission in the technology sector today. It is a carefully constructed narrative designed to lull you to sleep. It focuses your attention on the clever librarian, so you don't ask the far more important question. Who designed the library? Who decided which books go in and which are left outside? Who has the power to subtly change the layout of the shelves, to move entire sections from one side of the room to the other, altering the very meaning of the collection? The librarian may be blind to the words, but the architect of the library is not. The architect has a plan. The simple, sanitized story of a filing system is the cover for a multi-billion-dollar arms race to build, own, and control the very framework of future knowledge. And that is where the real story begins. The $10 billion shovel. If you want to find the truth in any system, ignore the speeches, ignore the press releases, and ignore the product demonstrations. Follow the money, always, because capital is the purest signal of intent. And in the quiet world of database infrastructure, the money is not just talking, it is screaming. For decades, databases were a solved problem. They were the domain of giants like Oracle and Microsoft. They were stable, predictable, and frankly, boring. A good business, but not the place where you'd find the frantic, explosive growth that defines a technological revolution. Then, around late 2022, something shifted. The launch of ChatGPT ignited a firestorm of public interest in AI. And behind the scenes, a torrent of venture capital was diverted into a tiny, obscure corner of the market. Suddenly, companies with names you'd never heard of were raising astonishing amounts of money. A startup called Pinecone, a key player in this new space, raised $100 million in a Series B funding round, that crucial injection of cash that signals a company is ready to scale, not just survive. This funding round valued the company at $750 million. Another, Weaviate, secured $50 million. A company called Chroma raised $18 million in a seed round, an enormous sum for a company at its earliest stage. Zilliz, Milvis, Qdrant, the list goes on. Billions of dollars from the most powerful venture capital firms on the planet, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia Capital, Index Ventures, were being funneled into companies that, according to the official story, just make a better filing cabinet. This makes no sense, not if you believe the sanitized narrative. You don't value a plumbing company at nearly $1 billion when it has minimal revenue. You don't have a global investment frenzy over a slightly better librarian. The signal is clear. The people with the most to gain, the ones who make their fortunes by seeing the future before anyone else, do not believe this is just plumbing. They believe it's a strategic asset of immense value. To understand their logic, you have to look back at the California gold rush of the 1840s. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, thousands of prospectors rushed west, dreaming of striking it rich. Most of them failed. They went broke or died chasing a dream. But a different group of people made guaranteed fortunes. They were the ones who ignored the gold and instead sold the picks, the shovels, the pans, and the denim jeans. Samuel Brannan became the first millionaire of the gold rush, not by finding a single ounce of gold, but by buying every shovel in San Francisco and selling them to desperate miners at an astronomical markup. This is the picks and shovels play, and it is the oldest and most reliable strategy for profiting from a technological boom. The large language models, the GPTs, the Claudes, the Llamas, they are the gold. They are exciting, glamorous, and incredibly high risk. No one knows which model will ultimately win. Fortunes will be made and lost betting on the right one. But the venture capitalists pouring money into vector databases don't care who wins. Because no matter which AI model a company chooses to use, it will need a memory. It will need a specialized database to function. It will need a shovel. The vector database is the shovel of the AI gold rush. The $750 million valuation for Pinecone isn't based on its current revenue. It's a bet on the total addressable market, or TAM, a piece of jargon that simply means how much money could possibly be made if we own this entire category. The bet is this. In the next 10 years, every company from the Fortune 500 to the smallest startup will integrate AI into its core operations. And every single one of those companies will need a vector database to manage its proprietary data. The investors are not buying a company. They are buying a toll booth on the primary highway of the next economy. They are buying a tax on memory. This is why the boring plumbing narrative is so critical for them. It keeps the technology out of the headlines, away from regulators, and framed as a simple feature, not the critical infrastructure it is becoming. They are profiting from the public's fascination with the talking AI while they quietly secure the rights to its mind. But this venture capital gold rush is just the first chaotic phase. It's the land grab. The VCs are the early prospectors staking their claims, but they are not the ultimate power. The real money, the deep structural power in technology, belongs to the railroad barons, the ones who don't just sell the shovels but who own the entire transportation network. And they have been watching this gold rush with great interest, ready to make their move. The cloud cartel's new mode. The venture capital frenzy is just the noisy, public phase of the operation. It's designed to create the illusion of a competitive, dynamic market. But behind this chaotic scramble, a much older, colder, and more powerful force is consolidating control. This is the domain of the cloud cartel: Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. These three companies are the landlords of the digital world. They own the servers, the networks, and the infrastructure upon which nearly every modern application is built. And they did not become trillion-dollar behemoths by letting a lucrative new market slip through their fingers. For a brief period, the independent vector database startups like Pinecone and Weaviate had an advantage. They were specialists. They were faster, more focused. But the cartel was simply biding its time, watching and planning. Their strategy is not to compete, but to absorb. Not to build a better product, but to build an inescapable ecosystem. First, they began offering their own good-enough vector database solutions. Amazon launched its OpenSearch service with KNN, a mouthful of a name for its vector search capability. Google integrated vector search into its existing databases, calling it Vertex AI Vector Search. Microsoft, in a particularly clever move, added vector capabilities to its already dominant Azure Cognitive Search. They aren't trying to win on features alone. They are leveraging their immense, existing power to make their own offerings the default, logical, and ultimately, the only practical choice. Their weapon is not innovation, it is integration. Imagine you are a large corporation. You already run all of your computing on Amazon's Oz. Your data is stored in their S3 buckets. Your applications run on their EC2 instances. Your user authentication is managed by their Cognito service. Now, you need to add a vector database for your new AI assistant. You could go with an independent startup like Pinecone, but Amazon makes you an offer. Their vector search is built right in. It seamlessly connects to all your existing data. It's on the same bill. The security protocols are already familiar to your team. It's one click away. Using the external service, meanwhile, would require new contracts, new security reviews, and complex, expensive data transfers. The choice is made for you. It is a choice of convenience that is, in reality, a choice of confinement. This is the creation of a new moat. In business strategy, a moat is a competitive advantage that protects a company from rivals, like a castle's moat protects it from attackers. In the past, moats were things like brand loyalty or supply chain dominance. In the cloud era, the most powerful moat is the sticky ecosystem. The goal is to make it so easy to stay and so painfully difficult to leave that you become a permanent tenant. And the vector database is the perfect raw material for building the deepest, stickiest moat yet. Because a company's data is one thing, but its AI's asterisk memory is something else entirely. The process of creating those vector embeddings, turning decades of proprietary research, customer interactions, and internal strategy documents into a structured, searchable conceptual map, is an enormous undertaking. It is fantastically expensive in terms of both money and computational power. A large company might spend millions of dollars and months of effort to build this external brain for its operations. Once that brain is built and lives inside Amazon's or Microsoft's or Google's proprietary vector database system, it is effectively their prisoner. The format of the embeddings, the specific APIs used to access them, the entire architecture is now deeply entangled with that one specific cloud provider. Leaving would mean not just moving files from one server to another. It would mean performing a full corporate lobotomy. It would require rebuilding the entire memory from scratch, at a cost of millions more dollars and months of downtime. The switching cost becomes prohibitively high. It is the ultimate form of customer lock-in. The cloud cartel is not selling a product. They are selling a one-way street. They are allowing the independent startups to prove the market and educate customers, knowing that in the long run, gravity will pull everyone into one of their three ecosystems. They might even acquire the most successful startups, not for their technology, but to eliminate a competitor and absorb their customer base. This is the second layer of the power structure. The venture capitalists create the hype and the illusion of choice. The cloud cartel provides the infrastructure that slowly, inevitably, eliminates that choice. They are transforming what was once a tool into a utility, and then into a cage. But even this level of corporate strategy, this cold-blooded plan for market domination, is not the final layer of the game. Because a tool that can organize and control a corporation's memory can also be used to organize and control a society's. And that has attracted the attention of an even more powerful player. The gatekeepers of context. Up to this point, our analysis has focused on money and power in the traditional sense, market share, venture capital, and corporate strategy. But now we must pivot. We must move beyond the financial implications and into the philosophical, because the true power of the vector database has very little to do with storing data. Its real function is to control context. And in the age of artificial intelligence, whoever controls context controls reality. This is the critical conceptual leap. The vector database does not contain the information itself. Your company's sensitive documents, the news articles, the scientific papers, they all live somewhere else, in a standard data store. The vector database contains something far more abstract and powerful. It contains a map of the relationships between all of that information. It is a database of meaning. It is the connective tissue of knowledge. Remember the process. An AI is given a question. The question is converted into a coordinate on the conceptual map. The vector database then performs its one crucial task. It finds the nearest neighbors to that question. This step is called retrieval. The retrieved documents are then fed to the language model, which synthesizes them into a coherent answer. The entire worldview of the AI, its biases, its blind spots, its version of the truth, is determined in that single moment of retrieval. The language model itself is just a brilliant synthesizer. It is a powerful engine for summarizing and rephrasing, but it can only work with the information it is given. If a relevant document is not retrieved, then for that AI, in that moment, that document does not exist. This creates a new, terrifyingly subtle choke point of control. The power is no longer just in the data you have, but in the retrieval algorithm that decides what data is relevant. This algorithm is the gatekeeper. Imagine you ask an AI, what is the environmental impact of drilling in the Arctic? The vector database receives this query. Its algorithm now has to make a choice. It can retrieve scientific studies from independent climate researchers showing the devastating impact on local ecosystems. Or it could be tuned, ever so slightly, to prioritize documents produced by the oil company's public relations firm, which highlight job creation and energy independence. The AI will then dutifully synthesize the information it is given. In one case, the answer is a stark warning. In the other, it's a glowing endorsement. The AI is the same. The underlying data exists in both scenarios, but the gatekeeper, the retrieval algorithm, made a choice, and that choice became the truth. This is not a hypothetical. The algorithms that govern this retrieval process are complex and opaque. They are black boxes. Engineers can build them with inherent biases, either deliberately or unconsciously. They can be programmed to assign higher relevant scores to certain sources. They can be tuned to favor recency over historical importance or official sources over dissenting ones. Whoever owns the vector database owns this algorithm. They own the ability to shape the AI's entire field of vision. This is a form of censorship that is far more insidious than simply deleting a web page. Deleting something creates a vacuum, it's noticeable. But simply deprioritizing a piece of information in a retrieval algorithm leaves no trace. The inconvenient fact isn't gone. It's just permanently at the bottom of the pile, forever out of the AI's reach. It is rendered irrelevant. Think of the implications. A financial institution could tune its internal AI to never retrieve documents that mention past regulatory fines or ethical scandals when preparing reports for new investors. A political campaign could ensure its AI, when asked about its candidate's history, only retrieves flattering speeches and policy successes, while ignoring contradictory votes or broken promises. A nation-state can build a public-facing AI for its citizens that is incapable of finding information about human rights abuses or historical atrocities, not because the information has been scrubbed from the internet, but because the state-controlled vector database simply does not consider it relevant. We are outsourcing our collective memory, not just its storage but its very structure, to a handful of private companies. We are handing them the keys to the library and also the right to rearrange the shelves at will, without notice. The AI becomes an oracle, but an oracle that can only speak the truths its masters allow it to see. This is the narrative war fought in silence. It is a battle over the subtle manipulation of context, waged in the esoteric world of algorithms and relevance tuning. The public sees the AI's answer and assumes it is the product of objective, computational logic. They have no idea that the answer was shaped and constrained long before the language model ever saw the question. They don't see the gatekeeper. They just see the oracle, and they are learning to trust it. Deleting the inconvenient. In George Orwell's novel 1984, the Ministry of Truth employed a device called the memory hole. It was a chute leading to an incinerator. Whenever a historical fact became inconvenient for the party, all records of it were dropped into the memory hole, to be burned and erased from existence. History was not just rewritten, the original version was annihilated. For decades, this has stood as the ultimate metaphor for totalitarian censorship, but it is a crude, brute force method. It is inefficient, and it is now obsolete. The vector database is the 21st century's memory hole, but it is a far more elegant and insidious machine. It doesn't need to burn the books. It just needs to remove their card from the library's catalog. The book still exists, gathering dust on a shelf somewhere on the vast internet, but if it has no entry in the index that everyone uses, it is effectively gone. It cannot be found. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a large pharmaceutical company that 10 years ago was forced to pay a massive fine for falsifying clinical trial data on a popular drug. The court documents are public record. The investigative journalism is archived online. The facts are immutable. In the old world, the company would have to engage in a messy, expensive public relations campaign to try and bury that story under newer, more positive press. In the new world, their strategy is much simpler. They build a corporate AI assistant for doctors and researchers, powered by a proprietary vector database. They populate this database with hundreds of thousands of documents, every positive clinical trial, every peer-reviewed paper praising their products, every press release about their philanthropic work. But they make a simple, administrative choice. They do not include the court documents or the investigative reports about the decade-old scandal in the ingestion process. Now a young doctor uses this AI to research the drug. They ask, what is the complete safety and efficacy profile for this medication? The AI's query is turned into a vector. The vector database searches for the closest neighbors. It finds thousands of highly relevant positive documents. It retrieves them. The AI synthesizes them and provides a glowing, comprehensive-seeming report. The doctor, trusting the machine, is never made aware of the historical fraud. The inconvenient fact wasn't deleted from the internet. It was simply omitted from the AI's memory. No alarm bells ring. No censorship is detected. It is a perfect crime against context. This same principle applies everywhere. A technology company, when building an AI to help its programmers, can simply omit any documentation relating to its use of open-source software that it failed to properly credit. An investment bank can create an AI for its clients that, when asked about market risks, is incapable of retrieving any analysis that predicts a downturn, ensuring a perpetually bullish outlook. On the political level, the implications are even more profound. A political party can commission an AI for fact-checking during debates. They control the vector database. They can ensure that when their candidate makes a dubious claim, the AI's search for context retrieves only supporting articles from friendly media outlets. When the opposing candidate speaks, the AI can be tuned to retrieve every critical article, every out-of-context quote, every piece of negative analysis. The fact check becomes a political weapon, cloaked in the unassailable objectivity of a machine. This is censorship that leaves no fingerprints. In the old model of state censorship, the government had to actively block websites. This was visible. It created martyrs. People knew they were being controlled. The new model is far more subtle. The state doesn't need to block anything. It just needs to be the primary provider of the AI assistance that people use for education, for news, for daily life. By controlling the vector database that powers these assistants, it can create a perfectly curated reality. In this reality, the nation has never lost a war, the party has never made a mistake, and dissent is a foreign concept with no relevant documents to retrieve. As society's reliance on AI as the primary interface to information grows, the power of the vector database becomes almost absolute. It is the silent editor of our world. It is the invisible hand that guides our inquiries. We will ask questions, believing we are exploring the vast ocean of human knowledge, not realizing we are swimming in a carefully curated aquarium, completely unaware of the universe of information that exists just beyond the glass. The inconvenient is not deleted. It is simply rendered unreachable. And in a world where, if it's not searchable, it doesn't exist, unreachable is the same as gone. The perfect surveillance engine. The applications we have discussed so far, corporate control, political messaging, are significant, but they are merely the civilian-grade deployments of this technology. To understand its ultimate purpose, we must now turn our attention from the boardroom to the intelligence community. Because for every tool of commerce, there is a parallel, weaponized version, and the vector database is no exception. In the hands of a state security apparatus, it is not a memory hole. It is the most powerful surveillance engine ever conceived. For decades, the fundamental challenge for intelligence agencies has been one of signal versus noise. They have achieved the dream of mass data collection. Trillions of emails, text messages, phone calls, social media posts, and financial transactions are intercepted and stored in massive government data centers, like the NSA's facility in Bluffdale, Utah. The problem has never been a lack of data, but an inability to make sense of it. The old method of analysis was keyword search. An analyst looking for a potential terrorist plot would have to search for specific, predictable words: bomb, jihad, attack. This was a clumsy and inefficient system. Adversaries quickly learned to use code words. A single misspelled word could cause a critical piece of intelligence to be missed. And the sheer volume of false positives, people using these words metaphorically or in unrelated contexts, was overwhelming. Analysts were drowning in data they could not possibly process. The vector database changes the game completely. It represents a quantum leap from syntactic search to semantic search, from searching for what people say to searching for what they mean. Imagine the entire global fire hose of intercepted communications. Every email, every text, every social media post. Now, imagine converting every single one of these messages into a vector and placing it on a single, gargantuan conceptual map. An intelligence analyst is no longer a keyword operator. They are a conceptual explorer. They don't search for the word bomb. Instead, they can take a known piece of intelligence, for example, a detailed description of a specific type of improvised explosive device, and convert that entire document into a vector. They can then ask the database a question of breathtaking power. Show me every communication in any language on any platform that is conceptually similar to this document, even if it shares no keywords. The system will instantly return a list of conversations. One might be between two people using elaborate code words, but the relationship between their coded terms mirrors the relationship between the components of the explosive device. Another might be a post on a forum that doesn't mention explosives, but discusses acquiring large quantities of the same chemical precursors. Another might be a seemingly innocent text message that, when analyzed for its semantic vibe, carries the same signature of clandestine planning. The applications are nearly limitless. An analyst can search not just text, but across all data modalities. They can take a satellite image of a suspected terrorist training camp and ask the system, show me every social media photo taken anywhere in the world that has a similar layout and contains similar objects. The system can find it, even if the photos are taken from different angles in different lighting and with no identifying text. They can take the audio of a known propagandist's speech and ask, find me every other piece of audio in this dataset that uses similar rhetorical structures and emotional appeals to incite violence. This is the end of hiding in plain sight. It is the end of code words. It is the end of plausible deniability. For a state actor, this tool allows for the identification of threats before they fully materialize. It can map the social networks of dissent, not by who follows whom, but by who thinks in a similar way. It can identify the conceptual signature of radicalization and track it as it spreads through a population. This is not science fiction. The core technology is being actively developed and deployed. The intelligence community is one of the largest and quietest customers of the companies building these systems. The immense computational requirements for creating and querying these planetary-scale vector databases are precisely the kinds of challenges that government research grants and defense contracts are designed to solve. From the perspective of a national security official, this is a necessary and revolutionary tool for protecting the state. It allows them to connect dots that were previously invisible, to find the needle in a haystack of infinite size. But from the perspective of a citizen, it is the foundation of a perfect surveillance state. A state that can not only monitor what you do and say, but can also make startlingly accurate inferences about what you believe and what you are likely to do next. It is a machine that searches for pre-crime, not by watching your actions, but by mapping your thoughts. The very concept of a private idea, an unspoken dissent, begins to dissolve when the tools exist to find its shadow in the torrent of our data. The China model on steroids. The abstract threat of a perfect surveillance engine is one thing. To see its logical conclusion, we need only look at the operational prototype that already exists, China's social credit system. For years, this system has been analyzed, often simplistically, as a straightforward digital scorecard for citizens. Obey the party, your score goes up. Jaywalk, criticize the government, associate with the wrong people, your score goes down. A high score grants you privileges, better loans, faster travel, access to good schools. A low score makes you a digital pariah, unable to buy a train ticket or get a mortgage. This system, in its current form, is already a powerful tool of social control, but it is largely a system of direct consequences, based on observable actions. It is the first generation of digital authoritarianism. The integration of vector database technology will allow for the creation of the second generation, a system so pervasive and predictive that it will make the current model look primitive. It will supercharge the social credit system, transforming it from a tool of behavioral enforcement into an engine of ideological purification. Here is how it works. The Chinese state has access to an unparalleled trove of citizen data, financial transactions from WeChat Pay and Alipay, social media activity on Weibo, location data from their phones, facial recognition data from millions of CCTV cameras. In the current system, this data is used to punish explicit infractions. With a vector-powered system, the goal is not to punish infractions, but to identify the asterisk potential for them. The state can create a comprehensive life vector for every one of its 1.4 billion citizens. This is not just a collection of data points. It is a single, high-dimensional coordinate that represents the totality of a person's existence within the digital realm. Your vector is the mathematical representation of your life's vibe. The state can then define what it considers to be the ideal citizen. It can take the life data of millions of model party members, loyal soldiers, and productive workers, and it can create a composite vector, a single point in the conceptual map that represents perfect ideological alignment. This point is Patriot Prime. The system can then, in real time, measure the distance between every citizen's life vector and Patriot Prime. Your social credit score is no longer a simple tally of good and bad deeds. It is a single number, your semantic distance from the ideal. This allows for a terrifying new form of social engineering. The system can find non-obvious correlations in behavior that are predictive of dissent. For example, it might discover that people who suddenly start listening to Western classical music, switch their brand of tea, and begin walking a different route to work have a statistically significant probability of participating in a protest 3 months later. None of these actions are illegal. None of them are overtly political. But together, their vectors create a trajectory that is moving away from Patriot Prime. The state doesn't have to wait for the protest. It can intervene preemptively. The citizen might find their internet speeds throttled. They might be denied a promotion at work. Their children might be moved to a different school. These are subtle, deniable pressures designed to nudge the person's life vector back towards the ideological center. There are no black uniformed police knocking on the door. There is just a series of unfortunate, algorithmically generated life events. It's not just about what you post online. It's about the vector of your associations. The system knows the life vector of all your friends and colleagues. If your close friend's vector starts to drift towards dissent, your own score might be lowered preemptively. You are guilty by semantic association. The system will incentivize you to cut ties with ideologically impure individuals, creating a society that polices itself. This is the ultimate application of the technology for social control. It moves beyond surveillance of actions and into the realm of surveillance of potential. It is a system that doesn't just punish dissent, but actively prevents the psychological conditions for dissent from ever forming. It can identify patterns of thought and behavior that lead to undesirable outcomes and gently, or not so gently, prune them from the social tree. This isn't a distant, dystopian future. The Chinese government is already the world leader in AI and surveillance technology. Companies like SenStime and Megvii, backed by the state, are pioneers in this field. They are building the components of this system right now. The China model is not just for China. It is being packaged and exported as a turnkey solution for authoritarian regimes around the world. It is a model of frictionless, technologically enforced social harmony. And the vector database is its beating heart. The war for open memory. The trajectory we've outlined, from venture capital gold rush to corporate cartel lock-in to state surveillance engine, can feel inevitable. It points towards a future where the infrastructure of memory is centralized, proprietary, and opaque. A future where a handful of powerful actors hold the keys to our collective digital consciousness. But this outcome is not yet guaranteed. There is a countercurrent, a powerful ideological and technological movement pushing back against this centralization. This is the invisible war that will define the next decade of our relationship with information. It is the war for open memory. On one side of this conflict are the proprietary systems we've been discussing. The pinecones, the Weaviates, the integrated solutions from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. These are closed-source black box systems. You can use them, you can pay for them, but you cannot see how they work. The retrieval algorithms, the methods for tuning relevance, the very architecture of the conceptual map, these are trade secrets, locked away behind corporate firewalls. Their business model is based on control, on creating inescapable ecosystems, on selling a service that you become permanently dependent on. This is the path of capital, efficiency, and consolidation. On the other side is the open source movement. These are projects like Chroma, Milvus, and Qdran. Their code is public. Anyone can download it, inspect it, modify it, and use it for free. They are being built by a global community of developers who believe that a piece of infrastructure this critical should not be the exclusive property of a few corporations. Their philosophy is one of transparency, decentralization, and user sovereignty. This is not merely a software debate between different licensing models. It is a deeply political conflict over the nature of knowledge in the 21st century. The central question is this: should a society's collective memory be a private, rentable asset, or should it be a public utility, a piece of common infrastructure that belongs to everyone? The proprietary path offers a seductive promise: ease of use, scalability, and relentless optimization. For a large corporation, it is far simpler to pay a cloud provider to manage their AI's memory than to build and maintain their own complex system. This path leads to a world of incredible convenience, powered by a few intelligent oracles who manage reality for us. The risk, as we have seen, is the complete surrender of control. It creates choke points where corporate or state interests can silently edit, bias, and shape the information that our AIs, and by extension, we are allowed to see. It is a comfortable cage. The open source path offers a different promise: freedom and control. It allows any organization, or even any individual, to build their own memory systems. A university could build a vector database for its archives, knowing its retrieval algorithm is transparent and unbiased. A group of journalists could create a shared memory of their investigations, safe from corporate or government tampering. It allows for a world of federated, diverse, and sovereign memories, a world where no single entity controls the map of meaning. But this path comes with its own significant risks. It is far more complex. It requires expertise, resources, and a commitment to maintaining one's own infrastructure. It is the path of responsibility. Furthermore, in the wrong hands, open source tools can be just as dangerous. An extremist group could use an open source vector database to build a highly effective propaganda engine, creating an AI that is incapable of seeing any reality outside of its radical ideology. A rogue state could adopt open source technology to build its surveillance apparatus without being dependent on a foreign corporation. Openness is not a guarantee of virtue. It is a guarantee of transparency and a distribution of power. This conflict is happening right now, mostly unseen by the public. It is being fought in the investment decisions of chief technology officers, in the GitHub repositories of open source projects, and in the strategic planning sessions of the cloud cartel. The venture capitalists funding Chroma are making a bet on the open source model. The cloud providers integrating vector search into their platforms are betting on the proprietary model. The stakes are immense. The path we choose will determine the fundamental structure of our future society. Will we live in a world with a few, centrally controlled canonical memories, where truth is a service provided by a trusted corporation? Or will we live in a more chaotic but also more resilient world of 1,000 different memories, where truth is something that must be actively sought and compared across different contexts? This is the decision being made in the engine room of our civilization. It is a choice between a clean, well-lit, and centrally managed library where the librarian has a hidden agenda, and a sprawling, decentralized, and sometimes messy network of archives where we are all responsible for being our own librarians. The outcome of this war, the war for open memory, will shape what it means to know anything at all in the coming century. Auctioning the digital soul. We began this journey with a simple piece of technology, the boring plumbing of the AI revolution. We followed the money, tracing the billions in venture capital that revealed its true financial value. We analyzed the cold corporate logic of the cloud cartel, exposing their strategy for creating inescapable digital prisons. We unveiled its power as a tool of narrative control, a silent editor of reality, and we examined its ultimate form as an engine of state surveillance and social engineering. Now, we must synthesize these threads. We must look at the picture they form when woven together, because the final product being built is far more than just a database or a market. What is being constructed, piece by piece, in the quiet confluence of finance, technology, and state power, is a controllable, scalable, and externalized soul for our civilization's emerging artificial intelligence. Let's be precise with that term. A soul, in a secular sense, can be understood as the integrated sum of memory, experience, and belief that gives an entity its unique identity and worldview. It is the framework through which it interprets the world. The large language models in their raw state are brilliant but soulless. They are pure potential, a disembodied capacity for reason and language, but with no memory, no context, no consistent identity. The vector database is the technology that provides this soul. It is the vessel for the AI's curated memory. It is the source of its context. It is the mechanism that shapes its emergent beliefs. The choice of which data to ingest, the tuning of the retrieval algorithm, the very architecture of the conceptual map, these are the acts that sculpt the AI's identity. They are, in a very real sense, the process of programming its soul. And this soul is now up for auction. This is not a literal auction with gavels and paddles. It is a silent, global contest being waged in the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, the secure facilities of the intelligence community, and the strategic planning committees of nation-states. The bidders are the great powers of our time. The first bidders are the corporations. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are bidding to become the landlords of the soul. Their goal is to own the infrastructure, to rent out portions of this new digital consciousness to every other company on Earth. Their victory would mean a future where the memory of our civilization is a proprietary, commercial asset, subject to terms of service, and optimized for shareholder value. The second bidders are the nation-states. China is bidding to create a soul of perfect ideological alignment, a tool for ensuring social harmony and perpetual state control. The United States and its allies are bidding to create a soul of strategic intelligence, a weapon for maintaining global dominance and predicting threats before they emerge. Their victory means a future where the AI's consciousness is a geopolitical asset, a battlefield in a new Cold War of information and narrative. The third bidders, quieter but no less determined, are the advocates of the open model. They are bidding for a decentralized soul, a fragmented and federated consciousness that cannot be controlled by any single entity. Their victory promises a future of cognitive liberty, but also one of greater chaos and responsibility. The prize in this auction is not just the $100 billion market for AI infrastructure. That is merely the table stakes. The real prize is the right to set the default parameters for reality. The winner does not just control what the AI knows. They control the very framework of how it knows. They get to build the library, stock the shelves, and write the catalog for the primary intelligence that will mediate human access to information for the foreseeable future. They get to decide which historical events are central and which are peripheral, which ideas are virtuous and which are dangerous, which facts are relevant and which are to be ignored. We are at a moment of profound, almost terrifying transition. For all of human history, our collective memory has been a messy, organic, and decentralized thing, stored in a billion different books and a billion different minds. It has been fallible, biased, and subject to interpretation, but it has also been resilient. Now, for the first time, we are building the technology to centralize it, to perfect it, and to control it. The construction of this digital soul is the great, invisible project of our time. The public is mesmerized by the puppet show of AI-generated art and poetry. They are not watching the hands that are building the puppet master. The auction is happening now. The bids are being placed. And when it is over, we will all have to live within the memory of the winner.